Okay, so 2023 has been an eventful year for drug policy reform in Norway, not least because of a high-level scandal involving the Norwegian police and a private anti-reform advocacy group. Just in case you haven't been watching the Norwegian news, Dag Wollebæk is here to bring you up to speed. Dag is a research professor at the Institutt for Social Research in Oslo and holds a PhD in Comparative Politics. Bridget Ellefsen, who is supposed to speak afterwards, is unfortunately sick. So Dag will present first, and then we will have a Q&A with Dag until the lunch break. So please log into Slido with the code here and pose your questions for Dag. Welcome to the stage, Dag Wollebæk.
Thank you so much, dear friends. It's great being here, seeing this full house, so many familiar faces and so many new friends to be made. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak to you. So when I first got this invitation to talk about Norwegian police scandal, my initial reaction was, which one? I could talk about police violence case, like in Kongsberg, where the policeman accused got acquitted in a district court, but the verdict has been appealed. I could talk about the police mocking vulnerable individuals on social media, or the miscarriages of justice because of bad police work in two major murder cases. I could talk about the illegal digital seizures of mobile phones and retaining passwords. I could talk about the jail time without due process that has affected thousands of individuals. I could talk about the political persecution of drug reform activists to silence criticism and chill free speech. I could talk about the increasing number of police shootings, or the sexual harassment in the police force, or the illegal drug testing on conscripts and discharge of them, or that the head of security police resigned after handling illegal weapons, or that the POD is sabotaging public access to public records, or the dysfunctional non-transparent special investigation unit, or the report saying there was a fair culture in the police, or that the disappearances of underage asylum seekers are not investigated. So there is a lot to pick from. But I only have 45 minutes, so I have to make some kind of delimitation here. So I will focus on two big ones. The NNPF scandal, which was alluded to in the introduction, and also the illegal use of coercive means. And these press clips also give a good opportunity to introduce two of the main characters. In the left-hand corner, you have Minister of Justice Emilie Enger Mehl from the Agrarian Party. And then in the right-hand corner, her antagonist, the Attorney General Jørn Sigurd Maurud. Before we delve into this, let's just get a quick comment from the Chief of Police to all these bubbles on these slides. She's saying it's been demanding years. Well, that's an understatement, if I ever heard one. But she's right, though, that trust in the police is still high, and I will later on turn to whether I think that's a good thing or not. No. Who is the NNPF, the Norwegian Narcotics Police Association? And earlier, I wondered, who are these people? Does Norway really have a drug police? Well, we don't. But this confusion is intended, and it has served them well. On the surface, it's a political interest organization lobbying for a strict stance on drug policy issues. But in reality, they are the drug policy wing of the police. They have infiltrated and taken over the police's role in policy development and enforcement to the point where they are more or less conjoined twins. Now this year, they reluctantly removed the P in their name for police. After the scandal I'm going to talk about, they've lost about a third of the members. And as you can see, their graphic design budget has probably also been cut. Now, this is how the public has been used to seeing them. They're seamlessly mixing the role as political activists and police. And at the same time as they're doing that, they're pushing merchandise. Like this beer mat, which is designed to ease the consumption of alcohol, which, as we all know, is not a drug, it's culture. So, for 3 decades, the NNPF had a good run. There was consensus on the war of drugs, and almost no penalty was considered too harsh. And in the eyes of the public, the NNPF was, without doubt, a force for good, with a hegemonic position. And their peak of recognition was the King's New Year speech in 2016, where he retells this seemingly moving story about a policeman meeting a boy, saying he believed in a change for him, and then the policeman said, "Maybe so, but my dream starts with you," and then the boy became quiet. Well, that's at least the story according to the king. This is from a documentary called Gatekampen, the street fight. In reality, if you watch the clip, the boy doesn't go silent. He's just cut off. And then a few minutes later, you meet the policeman who coincidentally was the leader of the Oslo chapter of the NNPF, later leader of the whole organization. So a few minutes later, we're meeting him again in a documentary. And now he talks about how they discipline drug users. And now the tone is quite different. We just have to stop being nice. Now it's pants off in public. And this is a perfect illustration of how humiliation and intimidation has been used as incredibly misguided prevention strategies. It also shows how the public and the elite not only turned a blind eye to this, but applauded it. Now, during the same period, there were several TV shows, like Nattpatrulje and Blålys and so on, that showed the police hunting drug users. There were outright human rights violations being shown. And no one, well, very few people, batted an eyelid. Now, the NNPF members probably think they are doing or have been doing good deeds. I would guess all of them think that. But there is also this sinister, almost sadistic streak running through the organization. Like in these examples where they kind of make light out of hangings and decapitations for drug offenses in their membership magazine. And the column in this magazine is called Short and Sweet. So it's supposed to be funny. And at the same time, they were enjoying this hegemonic position. Individuals in academia who argued for a humane drug policy or were critical against the NNPF were called hash professors, and their academic freedom was attacked through letters to the employers and so on. They attacked free speech, like trying to prevent the Liberal Youth Party from delivering legalization messages at schools, using their police authority to do so. They made deals with bars where customers couldn't display legalization symbol in exchange for lenience in alcohol serving rules. Again, acting as police. So there were several instances where they were actually working against liberal democratic rights. So let's have a look at what they were doing then. They have this annual so-called education conference. And this has been a main source of both income and recruitment for the organization. it was heavily funded by the police, who also encouraged participation. And those who participated became members, and this secures both their legitimacy and their funding. And then the participants got credits that could result in career advancement and higher wages. So what kind of education did they provide? The NNPF were unchallenged experts on drugs and used as such both in the police force and in the media and in the public sphere. And then they have this so-called signs and symptoms course, tegn og symptomer. And this course claims that ethical decline, dirty clothing, knowledge about drugs, pro-regulation views are all signs and symptoms of problematic drug use. This course has been a reliable source of income, both for the organization and for individual police officers. And a variant of this course, which is hard to distinguish from the material of the NNPF, is still taught at the police academy. It is the only academic course I can remember ever coming across that has no more than 2 real journal articles, 2 real academic publications on the syllabus. So it's now being peer-reviewed, so I just say good luck with that. So here's one example of the nonsense that they have spread. When the government decided that they wanted to allow the cultivation of hemp, the NNPF went totally ballistic and claimed that you can actually get high on hemp ropes. And their guy claims in this article with great confidence that you can extract drug doses from hemp ropes. And those who believe otherwise just haven't got the facts straight, right? So in another setting, they claim that you can get high on smoking banana peels. So following this prohibition logic, you would think then that, well, you should ban bananas and punish the consumption of bananas quite severely. And, you know, other fruits could be a gateway drug to bananas. Like you could start innocently with an apple, you know, but all of a sudden you're hooked on smoking banana peels, right? So just to be on the safe side, maybe we should ban all fruits. And we maybe need a fruit police association or something to enforce that ban. Maybe vegetables are a little bit risky also. You can, but for whatever reason, the NNPF hasn't gone that far. And I'm a bit afraid to give them ideas here. But so they were also unintentionally promoters of drugs. They often emphasize how easy it is to get access, enough drugs of all kinds for everyone who wants across all Norway. They say, well, if that's the case, you're not exactly doing a great job. So the NNPF scandal is also a media scandal. It wasn't clear in which cases the NNPF represented the NNPF or the police, or if anyone knew the difference, and the media did very little to clarify this confusion. And Birgitte Ellefsen, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, has done a really good, crucial job analyzing these media appearances. And she's identified a common narrative in the stories about the NNPF, and this is just a short version. They usually start with alarming headlines, and then they highlight some kind of scaring development, and then they make a demand for more police, more resources to the police, and then they end up with an invitation to come to the next NNPF town hall meeting. Well, these town hall meetings are usually terrifying. At least they change the title from "Your child is getting high" to a question at some point. Obviously, it's legal, if counterproductive, to for an organization to hold meetings and terrify parents. But who's speaking really? My favorite example is this guy. On May 4th, he talks to Lofotposten, the media, local newspaper, as an NNPF board member, announcing their upcoming town hall meeting. And then 3 days later, in Lofotposten's report from the town hall meeting, there he is. Same guy, now in uniform, representing the police. So who's really talking at these meetings? The role mixture is complete. So there have been several important actors criticizing the NNPF over the years, even during these golden years, like individuals at the police academy, Paul Larsson, for example, or Bård Standal, who wrote a very important and thorough op-ed chronicling or pointing out the issues with NNPF as early as 2016. But keeping in mind that I'm active in this network myself, I would say that the emergence of Twitter was a game changer. It was a game changer in bringing information out and bringing it to public attention. Now, Twitter is a loosely organized movement, few hundred Twitter accounts, and there are no clear boundaries of membership. It's an incredibly diverse group with some people are drug users, some are non-users, some are teetotalers, people from all walks of life, including academics and even some police officers, even though they might object to being included under this hashtag. But it is a network without very clear boundaries. And they use several methods. They use citizen journalism, using their right to access public records. And then these are disseminated and discussed using the affordances of Twitter, such as anonymity, visibility, interconnectivity, multimediality, and so on. Twitter is a very useful platform for achieving that. And then there are guerrilla tactics in the public sphere, like stickers, posters, and there's a lot of memes and humor. And there is also an interplay with the media, who picks up on their revelations and brings it to public attention, and there is some degree of interplay also with formal organizations. And most importantly, it achieves results. And it is a model example for modern digital social movements. Here are some examples of memes from Twitter. It was a very hard job picking. I could hold a 3-hour presentation with great memes. But just like this one shows the then leader of NNPF and pulling the strings of the police chief as the godmother. And that's not a completely inaccurate description in this area. So here's some of the snippets of information brought to public attention by Twitter. This is not an exhaustive list. They have documented some very dodgy money transfers from the police to the NNPF. Public entities, municipalities interacting with the NNPF, thinking they were talking to the police. The use of real mob methods against pubs and clubs, trying to pressuring them to put up their material, and this denying the customers who displayed certain symbols. And then the NNPF members themselves making personal profit from giving courses. There have been deliberate obfuscation of the difference between the NNPF and the police, with several examples of that mentioned here. And then there's the membership lists. Twitter gained access to the membership lists of the NNPF. And this caused an absolute outcry from the NNPF, obviously. And they have complained and still are complaining to several instances. I will talk later about, why it's important with these lists. But what the NNPF is claiming is that lists are sold on the black market to Hells Angels. Okay? So, funnily enough, it was the NNPF themselves who made the lists public, because they were so intertwined with the police that their membership fees were deducted from the salary, and their pay slips are public information. So they put it out there. So if Hells Angels is paying any money for these lists, they are incredibly incompetent criminals. Because they could just file a request for access to public records. Now, the purpose of obtaining these memberships lists was not prying into personal lives. It was about exposing potential issues of integrity and impartiality. And this utility has been demonstrated on several occasions. One example, these posters, which some of you may know, are satirizing the leadership of the NNPF. And despite clearly being within the boundaries of free speech, the two people here, the leader and deputy leader of NNPF, got so offended that they filed a complaint to the police. And the case ended in court in what one newspaper called the most embarrassing court case of the year. Now, these membership lists revealed that the prosecutor who issued the indictment was himself a member of the NNPF. And the case was dismissed. So one result of the revelations from Narkotwitter was a public inquiry and report called Police and Role Understanding. Terrible name. The Role Understanding Committee. Okay, whatever. I won't go through the points here, but as you can see, they are quite damning. And the main conclusions are that it's not a lack of rules, but it's a lack of will to follow the rules. And what's happened constitutes a democratic problem, right? So these are no small issues. So this is how it started and how it ended. And this was the end of the role confusion and mixing, and everyone was happy. Yay! You would have thought. You would have expected the Minister of Justice to rush to fix this problem, right? This is obviously not just an NNPF scandal, but it's a threat to the integrity of the police and rocks the very foundations of democracy. But Minister Mehl has not commented at all on the report's finding, except that we really shouldn't be so hard on the police. I will return to that in a minute. But she simply washed her hands and gave the responsibility for following up to the police directorate. And the assistant chief of police was tasked to liaise with organizations and sent out some invitations to meeting. Can you guess which organization he was a member of? You guessed right. Member of NNPF, but it's okay, he just forgot. So this is a good time to turn our attention to the second scandal, the use of illegal coercive means. And I've made a timeline, which is very popular now in Norway. And this scandal is, to the surprise of exactly no one, also connected to the NNPF. And it has moved through 5 distinct phases, and it is still unfolding. First phase begins with a slip-up in March 21 during the public hearing of the proposed drug reform. During the hearing, State Attorney Evanger said, "It would be a stretch to call it disproportionate for the police to search a user on the spot, and then we are talking about searching the person, pockets, and not least the phone. I have never encountered a situation where it wouldn't be allowed." Okay, that's strange, because there are plenty of such situations. And immediately we're in the second phase. Yes, you did. and is very, very illegal. That's where the Attorney General jumps in. He didn't quite see eye to eye with Evanger on the law. So, shortly after the hearing, General Attorney wrote a letter where he needed to clarify that the use of coercive means must be proportional to the crime. And the gravity of minor drug offenses is comparable to less serious traffic violations. So it's clearly not legal to confiscate mobile phones, to test blood and urine, to do degrading strip searches, to raid homes, etc. This violates both the Code of Criminal Procedure and it violates the human rights. He also announced that there would be a full review of the practices. And sure enough, when the results came in, they showed widespread practices of illegal phone searches, testing of bodily fluids, and so on. And according to our friend Bård Dyrdal from LEAP, these findings are just scratching the surface. For example, strip searches are frequently not registered in police records, how often they are done, or if they ever find anything during these searches. So, after these damning findings, you would expect those responsible to apologize profusely. And the Minister of Justice said sorry. No, Ministry of Justice said sorry. Important distinction. The police said sorry. And those affected started filing for compensation. But then some doubts started creeping in about how sorry they really were. If you read the fine print, the minister sent her deputy minister to issue the apology. And herself, she has never apologized. And it started to dawn on everyone that she was not really sorry about these illegal practices, but she was sorry that they had ended. And then the police, well, their apology is mysteriously missing now from the website. So how did the responsible politicians respond? Instead of fixing the police, they were more concerned about protecting the police against criticism. The leader of the Center Party said that it's scary to say that the police uses excessive force. And then the Minister of Justice called the criticism of the police rude, or drøyt in Norwegian. And in this interview, she says that criticizing the police too harshly could itself damage the trust in the police, and we must talk up the trust in the police. Okay, so that's a good time for me to put my political scientist hat on. And bear with me for a moment, because I'm delving a little bit into political science now. The way we talk about trust in Scandinavia is this fragile flower that we need to protect at any cost. And this is wrong. First of all, trust is not fragile, it's quite robust. Look at these trends. You know, the trust in the police in Norway is much higher than the Western European average, like 79% now, or in 2021 expressed high trust in the police. And in 2011, we had a massive police failure during the terrorist attacks at Utøya. You know, the police, the chief of police, he resigned from his position. You know, it was a terribly damning report, and that's barely visible in the figure. So it's incredibly robust, too robust. And second, it's not trust that we should protect and nurture, it's performance and trustworthiness. The ideal should not be as high trust as possible, but a correspondence between trust and performance. We're used to worry about trust being too low, but there is also a problem when you put too high trust in someone who doesn't deserve it. Because trust is a cognitive bias in how we evaluate situations. Many Norwegians can't imagine that the police do anything dishonest or wrong. And this problem is supercharged when there is lower trust in those who are subjected to power, such as drug users. So in this supercharged cognitive bias, you get blind spots where abuse of power can thrive. And that's how human rights violations can be sent on nightly TV shows as entertainment. When there is good reason for it, adjusting trust downwards is healthy for democracy. So it's actually more concerning that the recent data that we have indicate that the trust hasn't dropped very much. Manipulating perceptions by talking up trust is treating the symptom instead of the disease. And it's extremely unhealthy for democracy. Talking up trust is a recipe for problems not being identified and addressed. And then demanding trust from the public becomes just a rhetorical tool in the hands of the powerful. And then we have created a trust monster. Okay, enough political science. Let's go back to the timeline. After this non-apology, the next step was feigning confusion. And what added to the excuse for confusion was a second letter from the General Attorney in May 22, and Jørn outlined some of the political developments that the political majority in Parliament wanted decriminalization just for those with drug dependence and not general decriminalization. The Supreme Court followed up on that and issued several verdicts. And then the Attorney General, as a logical consequence, said that we shouldn't use these same invasive coercive means against people with drug dependence anymore. So basically, the Parliament's majority got exactly what they wanted. But what they didn't foresee was that people with drug dependency are not easily definable or identifiable. Like, people don't wear a badge saying, I have a drug problem. And when in doubt, the police were instructed to let the doubt favor the suspect, which is what you do in a society with rule of law. So in effect, because the parties in power, and even NNPF for that sake, say that they don't want to punish people with drug dependency, it became somewhat more difficult to go after those without a drug problem. And this was obviously very confusing. Now, these two letters from the General Attorney are quite short and concise, and even I can understand them, I think. And we have a police force that often calls itself the best in the world, and they have bachelor degrees, right? Nonetheless, in the following months, the media were full of very confused cops. And the most confused were the people you would think knew most about it, the police union and the NNPF. Now, the Attorney General is a very patient man. He offers to do a workshop to explain the rules in very simple terms. Now, this was Twitter's take on the workshop. Showing the chief of police and the current leader of the NNPF busy at work. Another Twitter user made this kind of easy-to-read pointing book format illustrated leaflet with some symbols. Now, with all this help from the Attorney General and Twitter, it's very hard to keep claiming that you're very confused. So what do you do then? You go from confusion to helplessness. So in the past months, media have been full of reports from police officers saying, our hands are tied, we need our tools back, which you never had, by the way. We cannot save youths like we used to. And more often than not, these officers interviewed are members of NNPF. So let's go to the fifth phase. Let's make it legal again. Or at least try. Because this is not an easy task. If you're up against both the criminal code of procedure and the human rights, you need what I call the 3 Ps. You need power, you need to create a panic, and you need a perpetrator, someone to blame. 3 Ps are very powerful. And they're a well-established playbook from the War on Terror. And we see it play out again here. Whoops. Now, power is the easy part. In this case, you have the Minister of Justice and you have the drug policy wing of the police. So you have a lot of power. For the panic, the cocaine use came in very handy. And then the perpetrator, Attorney General and the drug liberalists, that's kind of what puts the moral in moral panic, right? So you have someone who's doing something morally bad, and that makes it easier to rally support. So there is an increase in cocaine use that is real, and I think it's worrisome. But it is extremely exaggerated. There are these outlandish claims about cocaine as birthday gifts. It's among school children. Cocaine pressure. Everywhere there was a survey showing that it was 9% of students who had ever experienced any kind of cocaine pressure. But still, press conference. And then there's this town hall meeting again. Has cocaine become the new beer? Okay, maybe we're taking it a little bit far. And in all these media clips, the NNPF, or who knows, the police, are appearing as experts, calling for their tools back and their hands are tied and so on. And the blame is placed on the Attorney General, the drug liberalists, and even the drug reform that didn't pass, which they kind of claim somehow came into effect. Now, the thing about moral panic is that after a while it becomes self-sustaining. You can have panic entrepreneurs like the NNPF scaring people, but once people start believing it, then why shouldn't they? It's the police after all. Then it becomes self-sustaining and takes on a dynamic of its own. And then you can just lean back and let others do the job, such as influencers, terrified parents, teenagers. And obviously there's a self-fulfilling prophecy here. If everyone thinks cocaine is everywhere, then, what am I missing out on? What's called a majority misunderstanding. Okay, so what does the data say? Well, there is an increase in the use of cocaine, but it's still marginal, and at like 4.7%, it's not quite the new beer yet, right? And there's very little use below the age of 17. It's almost exclusively among youths with a very high alcohol consumption. And it's intimately tied to the binge drinking culture. And that one no one talks about. And also, it's a European trend, which these studies of wastewater from 7 European cities show. So the development has very little to do with Norwegian Attorney General. It is a concerning problem across Europe. But manufactured reality wins over reality every time. And the panic is now real. So the minister uses her power to set up a committee. And somewhat strangely, she asked a group of legal scholars to define drug dependency. You would think that would be a task for medicine, but okay. But they also were instructed to find ways of only punishing people without drug problems. Until, of course, the punishment caused them to develop drug problems, and then they would get help. And one of these loopholes were specified in the mandate, saying that when you assess proportionality, you should take into account that drug use is a significant social problem. Okay? Now, by definition, everything that is punished in society is a significant societal problem, because that's society's last resort to punish. So if you take this seriously, it's a very dangerous way of thinking about it. it jeopardizes the rights of everyone suspected of any criminal offenses, if you take it seriously. So when there is a moral panic going on, circumventing human rights is also a great issue for an election campaign. So just before the election 3 weeks ago, the minister went on a tour. And she met with police officers in 5 different spots. And they all had exactly the same request: get back the so-called tools they claim to have lost. And the blame again, the Attorney General, drug liberalists, moral decline, and so on. And the minister nodded very seriously. Totally agree. I'm working on it. Also, huge coincidence. All of these police officers, or in all of these cases, at least one of the police officers were a member of NNPF. Huge coincidence. So being this huge nerd, I tried to calculate the probability of this being a random occurrence. Assuming like 15% of the police force are NNPF members, and assuming random distribution of these members in police force, which is questionable. Okay, for the sake of argument, what are the odds? About 8,000 to 1. So you can debate my assumptions and so on, but there is no doubt that the NNPF is well connected to the political leadership. And they have now realized that they cannot go on like they did before, saying, okay, I'm from the NNPF, I'm in a uniform, I'm, talking as something. The role's very unclear. So this is no longer possible, right? So now they operate with more stealth. They have become more difficult to detect, and I obviously can't document that this is NNPF doing this. It's more difficult to document, but they're still doing, I believe, activism under the guise of police authority, and they are still the drug policy wing of the police. Okay, I'm going to start wrapping up now, but before my closing remark, I would like to mention this book. I think it's for sale somewhere around here. For those of you who read Norwegian, this is an excellent book released this year, which is a very thorough chronicle of the recent history of the police and the NNPF in the area of drug policy, and it has also been extremely useful in preparing this speech. So to sum up a bit, I believe significant progress has been made. Like the police isn't hunting recreational drug users like they used to. And there is this mobilization of public process. There's a new vigilance. And I believe the NNPF's golden years are over forever. The current biggest threat is defending the progress. And we're up against some powerful players. There's this new committee coming. We are a bit, many of us are quite anxious about what's going to play out in the next year. Now, I am a political scientist by training, so I'm not at all this. I've been quite harsh on the police here, but I'm not at all this ACAB person. I believe that a functioning police is vital to democracy, to peaceful and fair conflict resolution between citizens that is so important to maintaining the trust between citizens. And I also believe that police is doing very valuable work in other areas than drug prevention. So this is precisely why what we have learned in these years concern me, because I care about the police. We simply can't have an untrustworthy political police in any area. And we need a police that respects the basic rights of all citizens, regardless of the drug preferences. And until we have that, we still have an ongoing, serious police scandal.
Thank you, Dag. I'm sure I speak for us all when I say I'm glad that you're on our side. So we have time for a few questions. First up, do you think that the Norwegian press has changed after the report, and will we see less propaganda from now on?
Very good question. As I said in presentation, I think they operate with more stealth, and the propaganda has become more difficult to call out. And you still see that police sources are routinely used as the sole source in news coverage, especially in news about drug policies or drug events. And there are at least 3 problems with that. First, you have the question of integrity. And this is the NNPF issue. Who's really talking? Are we talking to the police, or are we talking to some political activist? And then there's this question about their skewed data, their experience. They mostly meet drug problems in situations where something goes wrong. And they rarely see unproblematic drug use. So this means that their perception of reality is very distorted, and they are unreliable experts on drug use. And then the third one is that there's a confirmation bias going on. If you know, there is this consensus among police that drug is the root of all evil and they are the solution, then every new event that they encounter will be interpreted in that same light, right? So they are extremely unreliable as experts, and should never be used as the sole source in news coverage. But nonetheless, we see that going on all the time. And propaganda might be a good word for it, but it's also about the police not being aware of their own limitations. That there is a difference between knowledge obtained through selective experience and information from research and more, objective studies. And I don't think they themselves are aware of that, and the media is certainly not aware of that.
This advocacy group in Norway were inspired by a Swedish sister organization, Svenska Narkotikapolitikforening.
Yeah.
Do you think anything will change in Sweden as a result of this scandal?
Well, no. Sweden is on a very scary trajectory, I would say. You see, and this started earlier, like in 2014, when the general attorney in Norway said that you should, prioritize down user cases, right? You saw the police involvement with recreational users went down, and in Sweden it went in the opposite direction. It just got worse and worse. And still, use stats from Norway and Sweden are very similar, so it's actually a perfect example of that. These police efforts does not have any causal effect on drug use trends, right? But now the public debate in Sweden is, they really are panicking, and I would say also for good reasons. But it's just that when you're in a state of panic, you tend to choose the wrong solutions. So there is a very, very weak climate, in my assessment, for drug reform proposals in Sweden right now. The public opinion is very much, let's go against the party users and so on. And more severe punishments are being added. So they have a long way to go, and they're moving in the wrong direction. And when I observe the corollary of knarkotwitter on Twitter, they just seem so resigned. They just, this is hopeless. They are so stupid. So there's none of this energy that we have in knarkotwitter, I believe, in knarkotwitter. Obviously, legalization would help solve some of the problems in Sweden. But my concern now is, because being Norwegian, I'm mostly concerned about Norway. My concern is that this climate in Sweden will spill over here. And I think we see some signs of that. The debate on Dagsnytt 18, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, where this agrarian center party keeps pushing, okay, solution is more police hunting drug users for some reason. What the hell? How could that help against gang violence? It's right. Yeah. Oh, Jesus. It's extremely frustrating, but no, I don't believe Sweden is on the same. I think they're on, completely different trajectory.
Okay, thank you. I was about to say thank you for some optimism here in Norway, and then you spoiled it.
Sorry.
In your opinion, what are the main drivers of the police's mismanagement of their mandate, and what can be done to make them behave?
It is very difficult to turn around the culture like that. But at the very minimum, you would need a leadership, both within the police and political leadership, that says what's been going on has been wrong, to offer reparation, to offer apologies, and to, in a real and transparent way, start to fix it. You know, that's a very minimum requirement. And we don't even have that. And then how do you turn around the culture? That's been there for 50 years. I think it's very difficult. In Georgia, there was a huge problem with corruption in the police force. What they did, they fired the entire police force and brought in new ones. And that worked, actually. That worked pretty well. But I don't think we can go that far. So we have to find somewhere, you know, between that extreme and where we are now, which is doing nothing.
Is it also the case in Norway that if we collect enough signatures, the parliament have to discuss it?
No.
Okay. That's unfortunate. So we talk about the police's role, but is there anything we can do to examine and scrutinize the media role, and what can we do to try and change the way they behave?
Yeah. That's also very I think there is the media has learned something from this, and you see some changes that they usually now add a fact box with some statistics to their scaremongering articles, right? So there is some degree of learning going on, but I think that it will be a very gradual process. And what we're doing right now is that we, you know, every time these articles come out, you know, we go after them. We email the editor of the newspaper and saying this is wrong. We write op-eds. You know, we bring it to public attention. So we're adding a cost to the media for doing this. You know, they know that, you know, if I just, you know, retell this police propaganda, there will probably be someone coming after me. And if they don't think that beforehand, then they will know, right? So it's kind of like raising a child.
Great. So if we see any suspicious media activity, we should send that to Dag?
Not to me, to NNPF, to the collective, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Final question. To what extent are the police responsible for the current state of drug legalization efforts in Norway?
The current state of drug
legalization efforts.
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
To what extent are the police responsible for the current state of drug legalization?
Okay, where we stand now, policy-wise? Well, I think they are fully responsible. I think the police/NNPF has shaped public perception about what drug use is, and in a very misinformed way. They have, you know, been doing this propaganda work not only in the media but also in schools, right? We've been taught this from when we were very small, and it's entirely the police's responsibility. Now, who else should you blame? You know, you can't blame science. It is they have shaped our perception of drugs, and then they have politically fought any serious effort to reform drug policy. So I would say it's entirely the police's responsibility, and it's even more than that. It is the NNPF's responsibility for infiltrating and taking over the police in the area of drug policy.
On that note, thank you very much, Dag Wollebæk.